There is a state formula that will determine if it is safe to reopen schools, okay? So open schools or not, there's a state formula that determines it. There are then state guidelines as to how that school reopens, right? State formula determines if it reopens. If it reopens, the second question is how, and that will be done by state guidelines. But the question of school opening is like the question of reopening the economy. Reopening the schools, reopening the economy. It's the same conversation. And by the way, it's the exact same conversation with the President of the United States. We talked about reopening the economy, and he said, just reopen the economy. There's no reason for any of this stuff, phases, data, masks. It's all baloney. Just reopen. Yeah, we saw how well that worked. Go ask Florida and Texas and Arizona how well that worked. On schools, what does he say? Reopen the schools. Just open them up. Don't worry. Yeah, he was wrong on the economic reopening. He's wrong on the schools reopening. Everybody wants to reopen the schools. I want to reopen the schools. Everybody wants to reopen the schools. It's not do we reopen or not. You reopen if it is safe to reopen. How do you know if it's safe? You look at the data. You don't hold your finger up and feel the wind. You don't have an inspiration. You don't have a dream. You don't have an emotion. Look at the data. We test more. We have more data than any state. Look at the data. If you have the virus under control, reopen. If you don't have the virus under control, then you can't reopen, right? We're not going to use our children as a litmus test, and we're not going to put our children in a place where their health is endangered. It's that simple. Common sense and intelligence can still determine what we do, even in this crazy environment. We're not going to use our children as guinea pigs. I say to the experts, it's very simple. If I'm making the determination as to whether or not I would send my daughter to school, if it's safe, I'll send her. If it's not safe, I'm not going to send her. And you can determine that by science. So the formula is this. Schools will reopen if that region is in phase 4 and the daily infection rate remains 5% or lower over a 14-day average. Okay? You're in phase 4 and you're under 5% infection rate. That means the virus is under control. That means it's safe to reopen. And then the schools can proceed to reopening in that region. Exactly how, you look at the state guidelines. This determination will be made the first week in August. Second question is, what happens if between the first week in August and the day school opens, the virus spikes? I don't want to be in a position where we made a determination August 7th and then the virus spikes, but we already said the schools are going to reopen. So the safety valve, there's a floor. Schools will close if the regional infection rate is above 9% on a 7-day average. Okay? So you get a green light, reopen in a region if you're in phase 4 and the infection rate is 5% or lower. If the infection rate goes over 9% on a 7-day average, that means the virus is moving rapidly and it is not intelligent to open. That's the green light and that's the red light, and it's the way we've done the economic reopening. It's purely on the numbers. Purely on the numbers. It's on the science. We'll make the first decision, we'll look at the numbers the week of August 1 to 7, the week because it's a rolling 14-day average. Different regions are in different positions on the 14-day average. Between August 1st, you get a green light on August 1st. Between August 1st and the day the school opens, we continue to monitor every day. And if the infection rate goes over 9, then we hit an emergency stop button. Okay? It's very simple. It's clear. Once you get a green light to reopen, then how you reopen, you follow the guidelines. And we leave it to the 700 school districts across the state to come up with the specific plan pursuant to those guidelines. We have done state health guidelines. The State Department of Education is doing state education guidelines, which will incorporate our health guidelines. We had a great Reimagine Education Advisory Council that did a lot of work to come up with the guidelines. Jim Malatras ran it for me. I want to thank them all very much for the good work they did. They're education officials from all across the state. They came up with guidelines that will say the districts have to have flexible plans, there have to be safeguards, they're prioritizing safety, maximizing available space, focusing on arts, career, technical education. They have to be innovative. How do you use remote learning? How do you use innovative models, best practices? And all the guidelines will be up today. We want masks and PPE whenever students or staff cannot maintain social distancing. Masks work. They work for children, they work for teachers, they work for everyone. We have social distancing, 6 feet separations. We have cohort structures in the guidelines. Guidelines on transportation, food service, aftercare, extracurricular activities. Every child and person entering will be screened. Tracing has to work in the schools, cleaning and closure procedures. That's all in the guidelines. And again, we've done the health guidelines, State Department of Education, which I do not run. It's a separate agency. They'll do the education guidelines incorporating ours.